Now, the only other thing I'd like to bring up, and people's like, well, you don't want to rock the boat too much. They'll see you as a problem, and they'll see you as an outlier and a disinformer and a misinformer. And you got to walk the chalk. You can't say something that's going to offend the wrong people. You're liable to get in trouble with the authorities or the government or whoever's making the rules or trying to make the rules. Well, that happened once before, a couple times before in this country, actually, on a grand scale. One of them we call the American Revolution, because we had a government that we were supposed to be loyal to in the form of King George, and he was kind of being a turd about things. He calling the shots from across the big pond there, and some people kind of took opposition to the way they were being treated. I don't have to tell y'all how that ended. That's why we're here today. Happened again in the 1860s, because the federal government tried to tell states how they could and could not manage their own affairs. And I'm not going to get into the back and forth about the slavery part. I do believe it was a mistake on the part of mankind, not Southern Americans alone, but mankind. Slavery predates any of us, or that was one of the great stains, I guess, on humanity, and it's still going on today, whether people want to admit it or not. In different places around the world, slavery is still a thing. They want to talk about, well, we need to pay these poor folks reparations for the crimes of slavery. Well, none of them that are alive today were slaves, and I'd be hard pressed for many of them to prove that they were descendants of slaves. And if they are, then, I hate it for your ancestors, but we're in a better place now, so you need to quit whining and shut up about it already. Because when we reach the point where an African American man was able to hold the highest office in the land as President of the United States, and one of the most powerful people on the face of the planet, I think that whole woe is me, poor little, no, that went out the window a long time ago. I'm sure I had descendants that were slaves, or not. I'm not descendants that were slaves, but I think I'm probably a descendant of a slave somewhere along the way. If you got people from Ireland, they were probably in some sort of slavery, maybe not chained to a stump, but they were slaves nonetheless. They were oppressed. You're going to be hard pressed to find anybody who came from very many places on this planet that at one time or another was not a victim of slavery. One people or another, one time or another. And I'm not knocking this immigration thing. I think illegal immigration is exactly that. It's illegal, and it should be treated as such. All of us that are here today in the United States of America, unless you're 100% Native American, have some form of immigration in your family tree too. I do. I'd say 99.5% of the people these days do. And as long as it's done the proper way and the right way, it's a good thing, because that's what's built this country. Did we take it from the Native Americans by force? Absolutely, our government did. I don't think, Joe and Billy Bob and the wagon train did it, but our government saw fit that they needed this or wanted that, or made people believe that they needed it because they wanted it. Whether if you had family that walk the trail of tears, they're just as much in tune to crying out about reparations as the ones that claim to be descendants of slaves in the South that worked cotton fields and such as that. But I've got ancestors that were in the Confederate Army, and they were treated worse than the slaves after, during Reconstruction. We had laws about, what Confederate soldiers, veterans could or could not own or do, or places they could be, or offices they could hold. Where's my reparations for that? I had a I had an ancestor, probably more than one, but one for sure that I can name, that was a brigadier general in the Confederate forces, and he ended up dying of natural causes years later, up in the 1870s. But you don't see us lining up at the courthouse steps, wearing little pink stocking caps with ears on them and torching the bank and turning over the mayor's car because we're not getting our fair share of the proceeds from, the way maybe some of our ancestors were done wrong. It's a crock. Some people will take offense to that, but I don't really care. We live in a world where you stand up, put your boots on yourself in time, pull your shirt on, and put on your work cap and go do your thing and make a living. And anybody who thinks that they're going to get through this world without putting a little bit of effort into their own survival is sorely mistaken, or you're just a fool. One or the other. I strongly believe in faith, but I'm not going to sit here on a stool and starve to death because I've got faith that God's going to feed me. If I don't get up off my lazy butt and do something for myself, I'll probably sit here and starve to death, because the Bible says, you shall not tempt the Lord thy God. He gives us enough sense to do for ourselves and to figure out life's problems if we choose to put just the minor amount of effort into it. Tree's known by its fruits, right? A dead tree is just a dead tree. It doesn't bear anything because it's dead. We owe more to our families and our country. The comments I made earlier about John Kerry talking about the First Amendment being a severe roadblock to their ability to freely exercise the right to govern and protect the life of democracy. If you read our founding documents, we're a republic, a constitutional republic, and I get so tired of people harping about, well, it's a democracy. We need to save our democracy. It's one of the greatest democracies on the face of the planet. We need to save democracy. Well, who was it that said it's a republic if you can keep it? I think there's a reason that our servicemen and women take an oath and our law enforcement take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And now we've got a former Secretary of State and a climate nut job that's sitting on the stage of the World Economic Forum complaining that the First Amendment of the Constitution is a severe roadblock to him having his way, or the Democratic Socialists having their way. That's just a big problem. We need to do something about it, because we need to win this election so we can squash it and just, hammer it out of existence so that life's easier for us and we can retain control and live the way we want to. It's a government for the people, by the people. And part of that people is also our men and women in uniform, whether it be on the federal level in our military, or the state level in our National Guard, or on the blacktop and gravel roads, the men and women in blue. And all of them take an oath to protect the Constitution and defend it. Well, I think we just saw this morning on the news two real good examples of domestic enemies. They would love for people to believe that a domestic enemy is a Trump supporter, or a domestic enemy is somebody who doesn't toe the line and agree with what they want. That's their version of a domestic enemy. But when our oath states to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I'm not the one wanting to abolish the First Amendment, and I'm not the one wanting to abolish the Second Amendment, and I'm not the one wanting to write up these fertilizer grade amendments to protect the things that go against anything righteous, you know. Well, we had Roe v. Wade back in the early 70s, you know, and we need to have that, you know, ratified into the Constitution so it's protected. Well, number one, it's evil, and that's just my personal view on it, and I think it's the good Lord's personal view on it that abortion is evil. So why would you want to enshrine something in your Constitution that's evil? Like I said, our nation's founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and being aware that we're one nation under God. And every time something bad happens, whether it was 9/11 or a high-profile school shooting, you know, you hear these people come out, you know, God bless America. You know, we're going to have a day of prayer for the victims. We're going to have a day of prayer for our country, and God bless. You know, after 9/11, it was all, you know, for a couple of years there straight. When it first happened, it was every day they were beating it in your head, you know. Pray for our nation. God bless America. Why would he want to bless a nation that's turned their back on him the way we have as a whole? Not all of us, but as a whole, this nation has thumbed its nose at the Almighty and done everything. I don't know how we're standing this long. If you could imagine, and you can't, but if you could imagine sitting on a throne, on the throne, and looking down at this nation and everything that we've done, the atrocities we committed in other countries for the sake of power or oil or money, the atrocities that we're committing today against our own people. You know, when you have good American people that lost everything in a disaster, and the best you can do, whether it's Hawaii or North Carolina, is fork over $750. Hey, where are you going to spend that $750 when the roads are washed out and you can't get anywhere, and the stores where you need to get stuff's washed away? What they did was hand them people 750 sheets of paper to wipe their hind end on, if they can find food to cause them to have to wipe their hind end tomorrow. It's insane. Zelensky come over and spoke with the UN General Assembly, and he skated out and flew back over there with, I don't even want to know how many billions of dollars this time. And now we've got our own fellow Americans down here in the aftermath of a hurricane. More coming in, looks like. Had the same thing happen in Hawaii when it caught fire out there. I've seen celebrities who live on that island, you know, giving interviews about how horrible it was, but I didn't see Oprah selling off her jewelry collection. I didn't see The Rock selling off his car collection. I didn't see any of them forfeiting or sacrificing anything for the welfare of their fellow man. And it was just on the same island. They want to tell you how to live, but they don't want to upchuck and leave, and, you know, give anything of their own or put themselves in a hard spot or a bind to help their fellow man, but they expect you to do it. They expect you to give up your constitutional rights so that they can have their way. You know, what's going to happen when everybody figures it out? We're told that the church will fall because men will be given, men with itchy ears, men and women and children, adolescents, teenagers, people will be given to believe a lie and fall victim to the doctrines of men rather than the doctrines of God. And when you have men, women, politicians, people in places of power telling you how you should think, how you should feel, how you should vote, where you can or cannot pray, where you can or cannot send your kids to school, when you can and when you cannot go to work, when you need to take a shot, or when, you know, no matter what it is, they try to control every facet of your life. And now they're openly coming out in front of cameras with witnesses, in front of audiences, and saying things like, well, the First Amendment's a major roadblock because it doesn't allow us. Hillary made the comment that if they didn't repeal Section 230 of the Communications Act, they'd lose total control. Well, last I looked, you didn't have any business having total control. That small part that says for the people, by the people, that's not up to you. That's up to the people. Many years ago, me and a friend of mine at work, we split on a case of these little booklets. And before I even hold this up, I'm not affiliated with these people in any way. I'm not standing to gain anything other than the satisfaction of knowing that people are becoming educated and see things for what they are, and lest we forget, you know, the people that founded this nation, the men and the women, and at times kids, children that fought the revolution, they didn't just lose their favor with whoever may have been in power. They lost everything. They lost their homes, they lost family members, they lost their land, they lost their citizenship to a point that some of them became, you know, some of them had to live it out the rest of their days in anonymity. Some of them lost their lives that weren't lucky enough to live out the rest of their days alone or shunned. But this little book right here explains a lot, and it's the Essential Liberty Pocket Guide. It's put out by the Essential Liberty Project out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And all it is a little reminder, a pocket-sized reminder of how we started and why we're here and how it all went about, and a lot of interesting historical quotes that I'm sure they don't teach in school anymore. But I keep going back to what I heard this morning from Mr. Kerry about the First Amendment being such a roadblock to their ability to freely govern, exercise their right to freely govern as they see fit. They, not we the people, but they, because they know better. They're smarter than us because they got degrees on the wall and stuff. So the First Amendment that's such a roadblock to him, I'm going to read this real quick to remind everybody exactly what he's expecting to take away, or what he's expecting all of us to give up to suit his fanciful vision of the way things should be. First Amendment of the Constitution: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, that last one, all over important, you know. Now you got your position of power and you're sitting pretty where you think you want to be. So now we can start tightening the noose. When you get into power and you don't want to relinquish that stranglehold you have and the money that flows with it, because money and power come together more often than not. So we give up the right to worship, and then we, at the same time, we're supposed to give up our freedom of speech, because that, you know, saying the wrong things, misinformation or disinformation, can't have that. So there goes your freedom of speech. And then the press, they can't cover it because freedom of the press, well, hell, that's in the First Amendment too. And then, the redress of grievances part, yeah, that takes away your ability to even argue the point that what they did wasn't right. So your ability to have a foothold to stand on, to fight them in court, or to complain at all, a redress of grievances, when that goes away, then where are we at? I know where we were in the 18th century, because I'm sure that when the founders that wrote the Declaration of Independence told King George, look, you know, this is what they were trying to do. They were trying to redress grievances that they had with the crown, and he pretty much told them to go pound sand. So they lost their ability for redress of grievances, and you know what happened next? I don't want to see anything like that happen again. I've got kids and grandkids that I love and worry about, and I want a bright future for. And the way the track that we're on right now, it doesn't look real bright. Everybody says, oh, well, we get through this election, there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel. Well, let's hope it's not a train. I'm not saying that just because Republicans may or may not gain control of the White House again means that it's going to be bright sunny skies and rainbows too going forward. I don't think that they're going to let it rest that easy. I think that if the right takes control again and the left loses, there'll be something invented or coordinated to change the course once again. It's not that we're fighting bad men and bad women, bad politicians. We're fighting evil. It's a battle between good and evil. People, wake up. We need to wake up. We need to put our priorities where they should have been all along. We need to lift our faces heavenward and mean it, not. God's not a fool. He won't be mocked. I've seen a lot of that going on after 9/11. And during COVID, people were flooding church houses, and they were raising up prayer, or what they thought was prayer, during bad times. And as soon as the bad times were over and things leveled out, the church houses emptied out again. People quit speaking up. If you're going to walk through this life in a world where you refuse to stand up, you're going to leave your babies and your grandbabies a world where they don't have the ability to stand up. And that's going to be weight on your head as well. Any thoughts or complaints, put a comment in down below. And appreciate y'all stopping by. Talk to you after a while.